I'm going to stop my video and I'm not over.
All right. Okay. So hello, everyone. Welcome everybody to the third annual event by BBHS. As you know, in the last 3 years, we've been doing an annual event on World Mental Health Day. So we welcome all of you for today's event and the third segment of the day. We're mindful that it's 5 dots, so we will give everybody about 5 minutes to join in so that we can start off then to maximize the attendance as well. And then we shall start off with introductions. All right, so we'll just give everybody a few minutes. Also, whilst we're waiting, I would like to add that if you do have any questions or any comments, please do feel free to add them into the section below. You will see an option for Q&A if you have any questions for a speaker. And if you do have any thoughts or comments you wish to share, please do share them in the chat box, and we would love to incorporate them in the, last 10 minutes. We dedicate the last 10 minutes to take on feedback and questions from everyone else. So yeah, we'll just wait for everybody. Right, so I see people are joining in. Wonderful. Welcome to everybody who's joining in. Hello. It's wonderful to see that, there have been participants who've been with us from the beginning of the day till now. Thank you so much for, staying on and, being tuned in to everything that's being talked about. It really means a lot. Thank you so much for being there from the beginning. I see a few new participants have come in, so I'll just share it once more that you can definitely add on to any questions or any comments and feedback. We would love to hear from you. So we shall be beginning shortly at 5:05, but we would definitely be hearing your feedbacks as well towards the end of our segment. Good evening, Asya. Hello. Welcome. I think we should just. Hello, everyone. All right. So I believe we should start off. So first of all, welcome everybody to our third annual event by Bayview High School on World Mental Health Day. As you know, 3 years ago, we started off with this venture, with this program, the Emotional Wellbeing Program, which was dedicated towards talking about the emotional well-being and mental health of our Bayview family and beyond, wanting to reach out to more and more people, talking about and really having a conversation surrounding mental health. What we noticed were that, of course, there were people talking about it, but as a school, as a platform, we felt the responsibility to increase the outreach, to involve more and more families and systems to be part of this journey, and most importantly, to be part of this conversation. And as you know, that every year we do have a wonderful lineup for you, and this year has been nothing different. All day, we've been having segments dedicated towards different topics. Our first segment was talking about women's mental health and the different experiences that women have had in reference to their life experiences. If you wish to catch what that segment was all about, it is going to be up on our Facebook. So please do check that out. And our second segment was dedicated towards talking about men's mental health, talking about patriarchy and some toxic expectations that sometimes men do get to experience in day-to-day lives. That too will be up on our Facebook, and do tune in to our website for more links and more information regarding the emotional well-being program. On this note, I would like to welcome you all for the third segment today. And the third segment is one which is very true and very dear to our hearts. It is what pushed us into even putting together this program and really venturing out into this. It was identifying school mental health programs. And most importantly, today's topic, which is how we can pave a path or a way forward for equal access to mental health care. This year's global theme for World Mental Health Day has been mental health in an unequal world. And we recognize as a system and as a society that there is a disparity. Not everybody yet has access, not even has access to conversations, let alone resources and support. So today we have this very important topic, and we would love to welcome our speaker, our guest speaker, Ms. Rabia Aziz Rizvi, who shall be shedding some significant light on this very important and very near and dear to our heart topic. So I would like to introduce Rabia before I give her the floor. Rabia Aziz Rizvi is the founder of an online support group called Special Needs Pakistan, which I believe does not need a very big introduction, because I feel that your work has been significant and has been reaching out to so many. It was created back in 2013, and it was taken as a social care initiative, which included Alia's care packages. She is a motivational speaker, facilitator, social worker, and caregiver. She has spoken on platforms such as Facebook, TEDx, WOW, Pons, WIPCON, youth empowerment programs and camps, rural and low-income areas, and several education institutions. She also founded the Choose Kind campaign 6 years ago after the birth of her daughter Alia, who was born with Apert syndrome, to educate and inculcate awareness, tolerance, and kindness towards the differently abled. So welcome, Rabia. Welcome once again. We always love having you. And yeah, I would like to now open the floor towards you. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much, Amna. That was a very, very humbling introduction. I'm really honored to be here year after year with BVH on this amazing journey of their emotional well-being and bringing mental health to such a dynamic, awareness. So I'm really happy to be here to talk, to raise awareness, and especially on World Mental Health Day. Nothing is better than that. So Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure, Rabia. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you. So yeah, I think we can get right into our discussion for today. So how about we kind of start off with, I know we've already given an introduction, but I would definitely like for you to, shed some light on, how you have seen or perceived the involvement that schools have had, or generally the dedication from schoolwork towards this cause. So I feel that you have worked with so many schools. Can you summarize your involvement as well as the involvements that schools have had for this cause per se?
Absolutely. I feel that more and more awareness is coming around as schools are incorporating emotional well-being, mental health awareness into their curriculums, where it is available as an open door policy. And yet we feel a huge lacking. As for myself and my involvement, my first way into the schools was to actually acknowledge and raise awareness for what mental health is. A lot of people to date do not know that emotional, psychological, psychosocial, physiological, and social well-being amounts to mental health. So that was one of my first doorways, going into schools and teaching the facilitators, teaching the administrators, teaching the teachers, because everybody carries their own mental health baggage. Everybody has their own trauma. Everybody has their social discomforts, So to provide a platform where the language becomes accessible and teaching a kind of tolerance for listening to intolerances. So raising awareness became a huge part of my journey of venturing out into schools and talking on platforms which would introduce empathy, where we can practice empathy to ourselves, and just not to ourselves, but the people who we are surrounded with, talking about inclusivity in schools. So I remember just a year ago when we were talking about, children, how children at the age of 18, they transform into adults on paper, but it takes their minds a couple of years to become an adult. So how can we equip our 0 to 18-year-olds with those kind of tools which would make them emotionally resilient and emotionally intelligent to be out into the community, into the society as solid members of the society, of the nation, of the country? Training the trainer became a huge part of my journey, because in our school systems, we feel that the teachers will come in, the administrators will come in, and they need to fulfill these jobs, but who's listening to them? So if their cups are poured out and their cups are empty, they'll be able to receive more from the students and be able to hold the students emotionally and so much more surrounding the comfort of the students. So mental health awareness campaigns really for easy accessibility became this vision for Choose Kind when I started off 6-7 years ago now.
I think you summed it up so beautifully, because absolutely, if your own cup is so full, taking on more, it just, then it is literally the spillover. And that is what impacts negatively the mental health of that person. Absolutely. And, you shared about that you've been focusing on training the trainer. But I'm also aware that you have been working and supporting a lot of parents in the past as well, especially since you founded Special Needs Pakistan. So if I may ask, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to accessing care for parents, especially with children who have mental health needs? And as a school system, what can schools do to help with this journey?
This is such a beautifully phrased question, because the more we think about the nitty-gritties and the more we think about what is not available, the first word of this question was supported. Supporting the parent, supporting the trainer, supporting the teacher, supporting the admin, and supporting the individual. So amongst many other barriers, the first and foremost barrier or hindrance that anybody faces, not just parents, but anybody, is support. The lack of support, the stigma and the taboo around the word support. So if we narrow it down and bring it to Pakistani communities and Pakistani schools, the concept of mental health has been driven. You do not need support. You do not need to go outside of your initial circle to seek support. Absolutely. And it translates into this age-old taboo of do not display your dirty laundry in public. Do not talk about your familial problems in public. Do not discuss what's happening inside your homes with your friends, with your teachers, with your colleagues, with your peers. And that kind of a support system has been the first and foremost barrier. Moving on from creating resources, training counselors where they are able to provide that kind of support to parents, because we are talking about parents over here. We are talking about accessing healthcare or mental health care for any child. And so the last few years, I've seen this trajectory where there has been a lot of openness. A lot of parents are reaching out for their, especially their adolescent, their younger, between 13 and 18-year-olds, reaching out for help. You know, my son is disturbed. My daughter doesn't seem to be able to eat anything. My son's having anxiety attacks. And so to be able to sort of, you know, really hone in into what is happening with children's mental health, what is happening in schools, what is happening in the houses where the primary caregivers are tackling problems. So I would say support has been the primary issue. And to tackle that for the mental health platforms, you know, it's very important for me to sort of make it possible to speak over here using your platform to talk to parents that not everything can be solved inside closed doors. Sometimes to reach out, it is important. To talk to the teachers is important. What's going on at school? If everything is okay at home, what's happening at school? Is the child getting bullied? Is there too much peer pressure? Is there academic pressure? Is the child not being able to retain a lot of the work they are being able to do? So there were 2-3 stats that, you know, I wanted to share over here. Is 56% of the pupils who are between the ages of 15 and 18, when they cannot contain their mental health symptoms, when they cannot reach out for support, resort to self-harm, resort to methods in which they will harm themselves so that they cannot feel the pain anymore. So they will bring themselves to this point of numbness. 45% of children go into eating disorders where they may be eating too much or eating nothing at all. And that leads, the eating nothing at all develops many more severe disorders, eating disorders. And 48% have any kind of panic attack. They have their body goes into this panic mode where they have that freeze or flight mode going on, where their body will experience trauma. And so to be able to understand all these things, the most important thing is to be able to understand support. How can I support my child? How can I support my student? How can I support my friend? And I think support has been a real challenge, you know, getting that awareness going that, okay, not everything is going to be a financial disaster for you. It is going to be easy on your pocket, finding the right resources. So I would really, you know, keep it short and say that mental health problems are visible and invisible. And to be able to know that everything is treatable really needs to be driven home. So support. Early detection, early intervention, support the individual who needs and who is asking and wanting to reach out.
I think that really does share a very important perspective here, and it brings it into focus that absolutely that it all starts with even realizing what form of support we can access. And it can be different to what we imagined. So support can be of many different types. And I think one thing that was coming up when you were sharing that, you know, how can I support my friend? How can I support my student? You know, what was almost coming up was mostly we focused on, okay, what can we jump in, do to rescue? But maybe also realizing that support can just be being with your, you know, friend or student. You may not have a solution per se, but you can just your presence in being with them can also sometimes just have that impact and can give that very support that they needed at that time. So I think
Absolutely. And that's so important. You know, Amna, you just nailed it. Staying there with them silently is the best kind of holding you can do.
And I think that's something that schools can start off with. So, you know, when I asked that how can schools really help with this, I think that's where your answer really lies, that start off by just, doing whatever you can in your capacity, and just be, like you said, be silently with your student. If they're struggling, if they're panicking, having anxiety, being with them can just be the very first step of bringing that change.
Also breaking the barrier, Amna, which is a very, very important thing. In our society, we've had this image of the teacher who holds this invisible barrier of respect, of so many other things, and yet is human on the other side of that invisible barrier. So I think humanizing support is really, really important. Showing that being a teacher does not mean that I will not be there for you, silently, empathetically, in all kinds of ways. And so that is one of the main things, realizing that, yes, there is this invisible barrier of respect, but being there when required.
And it's okay to not have an answer for your student, like I've seen that, sometimes our first instinct is, kya maine solution koi diya? Was I effective? Yeah. But it's okay. It's okay that you don't know, but you can just touch base with them that, maybe I can get back to you even. I think that, like, humanizing it, that even as a teacher, I may not know everything, and that's okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that, humanizing that, the appeal of who the teacher might be, or the representative of that school. So, if we can now kind of talk a little about what do you think are some of the gaps that are present in the system, that you have also seen in your experience, or you've experienced them yourself, that when it comes to mental health care, what are some of those disparities and gaps? And as a school, what more we can do to kind of fill those gaps? As a system, what can we do to fill those gaps?
When I was thinking about this, and I've been, because it's World Mental Health Day, there's been sessions after sessions after sessions. And one of the main things that schools need to incorporate to bridge invisible gaps, and gaps keep coming up, they keep getting filled, but learning to unlearn is this concept which is so beautiful. The moment we realize, as trainers, as teachers, as parents, as students, that it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to equip ourselves with tools that will bring us comfort, bring us more awareness, more self-regulation, and more empathy to ourselves. So acknowledging the gaps if we were to go wider on a really, really wide scale, there's going to be a real self-reflective debate. But learning to identify that in our educational system, the need for better mental health care opportunities, equal mental health care opportunities, and creating safe spaces is very, very important. Knowing that you can go to a teacher and speak to them in confidentiality is extremely important. So to make it sort of easier, I made a scenario, and if you are okay with it, I'd like to share these 4 scenarios that I have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Scenario 1 is a child who is perpetually distracted in class. Scenario 2 is a child who is being bullied or is bullying in school. Scenario 3 is a child who is otherwise extremely polite or happy, and yet is unable to perform during assessments and examinations. And scenario 4 is a child who is consistently attending school in inadequate conditions, whether it means there's unkept hair, there's untidy uniform, falls asleep in class, or you catch them crying often in corners. If I were to ask you, Amna, because you are a facilitator, what do you think is a common reflection in all 4 scenarios with the students?
So if I speak as a facilitator, and what I may have seen and experienced is, more often than not, these situations are perceived that, the child is not interested, he's being lazy. It might be seen necessarily from the lens of mental health concerns. It might be, something with behavior or any other reasoning for that matter. But mostly mental health lens is, I think, the last thing that comes up for someone. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you spoke to my heart, because what we see is, oh, a disrespectful child. What we see is an incompetent student. What we see is an unprepared student. And if we were to just listen to the unheard voices, listen to their body language, really focus in onto the unsaid words, the unsaid actions, and the unspoken silence. As a facilitator, as a teacher, these empathetic listening skills are the one main thing which will bridge all gaps, because we can't physically bridge everything, and we can't close in on all the gaps. But what we can do is have the ability to understand, an ability to reflect upon what the child or the student is feeling. So this idea to really focus on the unsaid stuff, you know. One of the main things when I was thinking about this is that in Orthodox schools, shaming a student in front of the class is one of the things that should be really discontinued. It should not take place anymore in our growing societies where we are just coming out of the pandemic. So shaming is one of the things I would say is a gap that needs to be bulldozed over. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think because, again, we don't maybe realize sometimes the impact that shame can have onto a child long term, not just in that moment, but yeah, the long term effect of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. So if I come to understanding, if there was a school system who wishes to embark on this journey, who wishes to, like we talked about, to set on to reducing these gaps, what do you think would be the important key elements that they would need to kind of take on for a successful school mental health program?
I think one of the really important things is to know culturally and physically what the school needs, what the hierarchy system is, what the school needs, because it's just not about the mental health awareness for the students. It's for the teachers, it's for the administrators, it's from the security guard to the cleaners to everybody who makes up that community of the school. So really realizing, where everybody is coming from. I know it is difficult. I know that when we sit and talk about what is a really effective mental health care program, it's knowing what kind of difficulties an individual is facing at home, because there are so many children who use the school premises as a safe haven. They come in to get that kind of relief from whatever trauma and whatever is happening, the dysfunctionality that is happening in the houses. So I think that knowing your people is the number one thing. Knowing your students, knowing your teachers. If there is something going on, intervention, how can it be intervened? And like you said, not always solutions are required. Sometimes just listening is required. So in my opinion, a good mental health care program would have a facility where there's counselors in place who are there to listen, who are there to reflect, and who are there to be there silently or empathetically with the individuals on their journey. Having qualified mental health care trainers is also very important, so that we know that they're training in place, they're psychologists or counselors who can talk properly, guide properly, and sometimes not even guide, sometimes just be there to hold space. One of the main essential things is having a strong mental health care program will also mean that the school stands really hard ground and knows, okay, we need to introduce this to our before the students and the parents, the staff is trained. So continuous workshops for their administrative staff and for their teachers, who are the main providers, main caregivers when the children are in school. So continuously having workshops where not just the staff's mental health care is being assessed and evaluated and addressed, but they are also equipped with tools to be able to better navigate in classrooms. because that better navigation in classrooms is going to have a more mentally resilient classroom, where the children are more emotionally resilient and stronger. Having an open door policy is something which is, I have seen it in schools. I have seen it at BVH. I have seen the EW program run successfully. And that open door policy gives the students that kind of narrative. Okay, help is available. I just need to know when to reach out. So perhaps putting these invisibly visible arrows, where they're silently kind of navigating students and prompting them. Are you having a bad day? Prompting them in the primary sections, in the kindergarten sections. Are you going through an emotionally tough day? Are you happy? Are you sad? And I've seen those smiley faces up in your kindergarten section, which is a great way of introducing what is happening with your emotions and feelings. So that kind of emotional regulation is so important, to have an emotionally regulated child, which will later transform into an emotionally regulated adolescent, and then an emotionally regulated adult. Knowing that the school is a safe and positive school space where the child is coming in and they know, okay, I know that this is my time out. Another thing that I think that schools over here need to promote is physical health, which is, a lot of times children will come in with letters and say, okay, I cannot participate. My parent has said I cannot participate. It should be a mandate. We are sorry, we do want all children to participate in physical activities, unless and until it's a medical transcript. It is encouraging physical activity, encouraging social interaction, because after the pandemic, we have become socially recluse, and now children are going to be hungry. They're going to come in hungry. They're going to come in with a whole load of emotions. So I think that the schools getting up for these programs it's going to be really, really important to encompass all of these. And then running an emotional wellness week, which you guys are doing fabulously. So a wellness week is so important, where you come in, you have seminars, the school arranges activities which are outside of the academic realm, which are outside of, you have bake sales, you have mindfulness sessions, meditation sessions, which are absolutely great for students and teachers. So I think those are a lot of things that we are pushing for.
Yeah, and I think so. What you highlighted here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not just having a school mental health program limited to counseling, but having so many other steps, associated steps that can be taken along with the counseling program. So actually, that was my next question, but I think you've already kind of, shed some light on that other than having a school mental health program, what other steps can be taken? And I think you so beautifully put it in that, your corridors can have some, elements kind of sparking those, cues about what your mental health check-ins can be like, almost. Dedicating your staff to also be tuned into dialogue to normalize talking about mental health in day-to-day classes. Is there anything else that you feel is an associated step that can be taken?
The reason why I kind of like encompass both of these and sort of like merge them together is because equipping not just students, but the staff also with life skills is so important. And when we talk about life skills, we're talking about knowing the positive mechanisms of coping, of problem solving, which now are values that are, and I keep bringing in pandemic because these kind of things have always been there. But post-pandemic, low self-esteem, low positive regard, you need to be able to bring that up so that a student knows that my sense of purpose, my sense of being, and I have agency, just to say that out loud, not just in your head, but to say that out loud. I have agency. I am important. I love myself. These kind of important life skills need to be really, really pushed through, where there's light on positivity, but there's also light on negativity. The light on negativity, it's okay. It's okay if you've had trauma in the household. It's okay because that trauma does not define you. It's okay if you're coming from a domestically abusive circle. It's okay if you were a bully or have experienced bully, because that does not define you. So having educators and students kind of be capable enough to address these for themselves, to navigate through the chaos, and to navigate to recognize, recognize when they are going through emotional turmoil. Okay, I need to regulate myself. I need to take 2 minutes to kind of sort of just breathe. I just need to develop why the other person is doing so, or be able to work effectively. And I think that this will come into handy for all teachers and students alike, being able to work in groups. Why are groups promoted? Why are team skills promoted so much? So to be able to not just tell them, okay, this is what you need to do. Give them the concept behind it. Tell them, these are the challenges. These are the concepts behind this. And this is why we want you to construct it so. Because these are the life skills that we are trying to enable you with. So I think really knowing that kind of, completes this. And I think I cannot emphasize enough on routine checks. Just to have a program is not enough. To be able to know that there is facilitation, and yet that facilitation in check. There is, in terms of a therapeutic space, or in terms of a therapy world, a therapist is always in therapy themselves. And as a psychologist, I know that this is very, very close to the heart of all practitioners, to know that self-checks are so important. Routine checks are so important, screenings, just by screening, the screener is not important. Bringing in collaboration. So, something that BVH can look into next is bringing in collaborative screenings, where they're bringing in behavioral therapists if they don't have them on board already, or interventionists from the outside. So they know that, okay, our school is constantly bringing in somebody from the outside and saying, hey, we are here to talk to you outside of this safe space. We're creating another minor safe space for you. Is there something that you would like to discuss with us? So those are the kind of things that really would make a brilliant, program.
Absolutely. I think that really helps give a holistic overview of what can be an effective model, not just having the program in itself, but what are some of the elements that need to kind of go hand in hand with it to successfully carry it forward. Because having something just on paper versus having its efficacy literally seen within the change that you see with the students and the families involved. Absolutely. And yes, Bayview High School has some future collabs that are, with time, inshallah, everybody will be getting to know more about them. But I completely agree that having more expertise coming in, more perspectives coming in, professional perspectives can definitely lift that platform altogether. So definitely we agree with that. So, you mentioned the pandemic, and you mentioned the, impact that COVID-19 has had, and how, possibly we've faced a greater need now for programs of this nature is what we're seeing. Do you feel that people have now realized it more, or somewhere or the other, the process of realizing had started, but maybe nobody was really putting a voice to it? What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely, Amna. I think that the need for support, the need to reach out, the need to be heard has been there. But what COVID-19 really did was like dented it, with that it paused that, but it also encroached upon a lot of the visible and invisible safe spaces. Yeah. So like we discussed earlier on, a lot of children were coming in from trauma-stricken homes, and their only safe haven was their school. A lot of the children thrived during the pandemic because they were being bullied in school. That was an unsafe space for them. And then they thrived at home virtually because they didn't have that social anxiety. They didn't have that qualm about being in front of a screen. So we saw both both kind of negatives and positives happening. But during the pandemic, that tele platform, that really closing in on accessibility, so we saw children who came in to mental health platforms, and they said, well, I am 13 years old, but I need a counselor. And all these things about, oh, well, where are your caregivers? And that became secondary. Allowing that child to be heard became primary, and that child just needed to be heard. So I feel that during COVID-19, yes, there has been an exponential growth in mental health being really, really challenged and encroached upon. But there has been a lot of spotlight, and the outrage is there. And we love when there's outrage, because that means that more people are listening.
There's more dialogue. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think even someone in the chat did agree with you that the pandemic has taken a toll on children's mental health and even the parents, I feel. And having this increase, this exponential increase, like you said, in talking about it now, can really propel us into taking more and more measures to reducing that gap that we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
So, if I can ask you here, Rabia, that students are sometimes hesitant to reach out. So there are some who will reach out very openly. They will want to talk about it. They will, like you said, a 13-year-old might come up and say that, I want to talk to a counselor. But there are some students who may still continue to be hesitant to reach out due to the available stigma that is still attached. We recognize it's still there. So do you believe that there are certain steps that a school can take that can ensure that students are more likely to utilize these programs and these resources, and to kind of work around that stigma? Because that's, I think, one of the primary barriers that we're noticing.
I'm not, fear of being called out or fear of being shamed is there from when we are a baby to when we are almost at our deathbed. That fear of being revealed, and so I like to do like a really short 30-second experiment over here. All those people who are tuned in fact, you also, I'll invite you to just close your eyes, or if you want, lower your gaze, sit comfortably, and really, really think about where your breath is. And I invite you to breathe gently, naturally, and just simply following the rhythm of your breath. Inhale, exhale. And as you breathe, feel your stomach and feel your lungs expanding. And as you breathe out, letting go, letting all your fears go, letting all your pains go. And as you breathe in, feel your body getting fuller. And as you breathe out, let any tension or stress that is lingering on relieve you. Feel the lightness from the nape of your neck to your shoulders, down to your elbows and out through your palms. Feel the aliveness, feel the awake. And as you breathe out, feel the relaxation, feel the calmness. And as you keep breathing, imagine for a moment you have let go. And when you are ready, come back to the present awareness. That was just a glimpse.
Yeah.
Those participants who are still breathing and getting connected to their body, their gut, their insides. Not everything needs to be talked out. Not everything needs to be physically experienced. There are some things which can just be experienced through meditation, through breathing. And so to know that someone is not going to walk so easily through the door, have these small workshops, where there's this trueness, where there's this honesty and genuineness, where the person who is going to cross your office a couple of times knows that there's going to be 100% confidentiality to the words that are going to be spoken. And no, for the trainers, no, for the educators, know that there are going to be many a times where a child is going to come in and bring in a lot of silence and emotional breakdowns, and to just be with them, just be available to breathe, meditate, sing, dance, listen to music, have all these kinds of things which will which the student can avail and yet be comfortable in maintaining their silence. So we know that there's a build-up. We know that there are going to be like 6-7 sessions where they're going to come into silence, and then there's going to be a day when they're going to finally, say, I don't like the color yellow. Now, well, why don't you like the color yellow is one thing, or what color do you like? So really learning the language, really learn not the whats and the buts and the ifs, putting them aside and really learning about how, wondering, really learning the language. So I think being kind to their mind, being kind to their body, their heart, and their gut will then allow them to come in and speak. Otherwise, without them being in tune with their body and listening to their own voice, it's when they listen to their own voice is when they're going to speak out.
Absolutely.
So having that kind of ability, I'm here, I'm going to just play this music. I don't know whether you like this music or not, but this is available. This couch is available. I think that kind of a rapport is something that, can really facilitate students.
And I really like when you said that, focusing more on learning about, the child at the receiving end and getting to know them, what's happening to them at that time, rather than our interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So
no assumptions, no judgments.
No assumptions, no judgments, no preconceived notions. Absolutely. So do you feel that even after, kind of taking on all these, recommendations and all these key elements that we're talking about, and, kind of giving that access and platform, do you feel that there can still be unequal access? So we're talking about enhancing access, but we still recognize that it might still not be equal in nature. So what factors do you feel really are pertinent in recognizing why there's inequality right there, or what's causing the disparity in access?
So, this is something that is really close to my heart, because that is what I'm an advocate for, the inequality and that realization of inequality. So quick experiment, I would have loved if we were, these were not COVID times and we were in an auditorium and we could really look. But if we were to just imagine that we are in an auditorium and we're looking to our left and to our right, how many people will we see on wheelchairs? How many people will we see with some kind of limb impairment, with a life-threatening disease, with it is what do you see? How do you see it? Who do you see? Do you have somebody who has a visual impairment? Do you have a friend who has a hearing aid on? And these are the kind of things which really makes it unequal. And yet I do understand that from a larger lens and a larger perspective, if we were to pause with the inclusivity, go on to the next thing. What about diversity? What about cultural empathy, cultural differences? What about provincial languages? What about a child coming in who's never spoken English, but can write it, can read it, but can't speak it? What about practices? What about minorities? What about giving that kind of promotion to ethnic communities? And these are the kind of things that really now need to become a talk in the moment, because as children are becoming more technologically savvy, as children are knowing more, there is so much more that we need to inculcate. There's sex ed needs to come in, mental health awareness needs to come in. A part of really bringing in sexual education under mental health awareness is a huge deal. Talking about gender differences, and this is where we kind of see it all kind of like dissipates because there is so much being held by a single thread. With so much fragility and so much insensitivity. So how are we bringing that sensitivity back in? By talking more, by being more candid about it, and knowing that there is an openness of acceptance. If I go into the counselor's room saying that, okay, well, this has happened to me at home, there is no shock and astonishment there. There's just holding and acceptance and embracing, okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the next steps. So I think more openness would be more desirable.
Yeah. And I think it kind of just gels in well that when you say that, it's important to be open about it and judgment free, and also recognizing that there will be several stories that might come your way, and, not, kind of responding to each in the same way. So unequal access can also be one generalized approach for all, which may not really work even.
Absolutely.
So yeah, kind of tuning into what's happening to that person at that time.
Yeah,
I think that's a very good point. And if we do recognize one possible barrier or one possible factor that can limit the access to mental health, can be when a child recognizes they want support, they want to talk to the counselor, but we may not have parental consent. We may recognize that. And we do respect that, especially children who are under the ages of 18, we respect that that is a very important aspect. But then how do we tackle this really important factor where the child will wish to talk about mental health and to explore it, may not even be wanting to do anything about it, but to explore what is mental health, what are my emotions, but may not have that support yet. So how do we tackle this?
Absolutely. And lack of parental support can sometimes be so taunting, can really drain a child, because you would expect that my primary caregiver is going to be there for my primary needs, and mental health is a primary need, is a very, very important need of the day, where children are coming out of pandemic and there's so much that they are holding in that needs to be let out. This is where I talk about in educational institutions really holding on to their turf, and educational institutions have been, again, and this has been a repeat, Amna, where we are talking about educational institutions being, for the longest time, they've been safe havens for students. So incorporating placements where, hearing and listening to the minor becomes the first step, and then registering the institution with a placement service which is licensed, which is accessible, perhaps contracted as a healthcare provider inside the institution, who can bear credentials from licensed institutions, and they can then tackle it and say, okay, the school principal or the year group leader can be the signatory for this child. Let's actually find out what's going on. Is there abuse taking place at home? Has the child been exposed to sexual abuse? Now, these are the kind of things which no parent would want out. And yet, if the child receives enough support in school, that means the educational institution is really holding on that my students' welfare, emotional well-being is first and foremost, is priority.
Yes.
I know that legally, no parent is going to pull their child out of school for their emotional wellness being addressed. But yes, they will pull their child out of school if they were to find out that there's shame upon them because something so drastic has been discussed. But what about that student? What about that child who is going to become a traumatic adult later on? So there are a lot of things that educational institutions can sort of imbibe in their policy making, have it on their thing. If we feel that a child is going through trauma, if we feel that a child is experiencing PTSD, these are the steps we're going to take. And as a policy, have it in place that we have an open door policy in school. If a child comes and discusses it in school, we will take it upon and we will have action against it. So, improvising on policies is something that is slowly kicking in though.
Yeah, and I think learning from it, it's learning curve for even for the schools, I feel. It's kind of expanding and being more flexible with what policies and terms and conditions can really be. And you already kind of touched upon this, so I would like you to elaborate a little that this is like a risk factor that we're talking about of having a school mental health program. One of the risk factors is not having the support of the parents that we would desire. Are there any other risk factors that come into your mind that you would like to share?
The risk factors are over here in Pakistan are that shame and that taboo and that stigma that will fall onto the child. So really knowing if the school itself is providing, I like to share the Philadelphia School Model Program, which is called it's the 5 T's for mental health. Talking, training, teaching, equipping tools, and taking care of trainer. So if we know that there is a child at risk, again, an educational institution which has solid policies and solid signed off things by the parents, signed off forms, there should be transparency, there should be paperwork for each and every child coming into the clinic, into the office, into the emotional well-being office. So there has to be that kind of transparency. Perhaps if they are minors, have recorded sessions so that there's no gray area. But the school leader, the year group leader, or the principal acts as the main person who is signing off for that minor, because the school principal has that kind of authority. The school principal is the person who is responsible for the children while they're on premises. So, those are the kind of things that we can talk about and look into, but with a lot of sensitivity. It is a sensitive matter.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So I'm mindful of the time, so we'll just take one more question that we really would love your view on, which is your opinion on what mental health can be as a subject in the curriculum. We recognize that there are subjects on so many things. Having mental health or emotional well-being being a subject for students to have access regularly. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think that in a school like yours, where emotional wellness programs are already in place, right? It is so important not to impose more curriculum-based, where we are bringing in mental health care as a subject, but we are bringing in ways where it can become, whether they're relaxation techniques, whether it's teaching them different kinds of exercises, whether it's Tai Chi, whether it's yoga, whether it's just encompassing mindfulness, whether it's bringing in visual arts. There's already theater and music in place in many schools, but really bringing in the unorthodox methods of performing arts and the arts, just dropping down jars of paint, filling in balloons with paint and just dropping them down, getting yourselves dirty, breaking that silence, having breakout rooms, having timeouts, allowing the students to manage themselves, to de-escalate, and that kind of thing can really bring awareness and bring importance to the kind of emotional well-being that is being supported by the school, removing that taboo from mental illness. There's going to be a child or two who will be experiencing depression, and the first person who is going to shame them for that is going to be an adult, which is going to be their primary caregiver or their teacher, to really know the language that needs to be used inside schools. So I would break this, instead of a curriculum, I would break this down into components. If you are feeling lethargic today, you need to go towards yoga. If you are feeling overexcited, or if you're feeling hyper vigilant or hyper aroused, we want you to take in music, drum it out, beat it out, let it flow, let it go. And those kind of things would allow the students not to be under pressure and be able to face challenges by self-regulating themselves, because self-regulation is something that we just don't address. So I think the answer to this lies really in something we talked about in the earlier questions, which was really equipping students with life skills, allowing them to know that you can enhance your emotional awareness. You can say no, you can build boundaries, you can say no to people. You don't have to be in victim cycles, really equipping themselves how to take care of their stress, and how to have a positive attitude and a mindset, that I think would really help out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rabia, for beautiful insights. And I think it was such a holistic, just view into the world of what we can do to not only recognize these gaps, but what we can do responsibly to reduce them. So thank you so much for all your expertise. There have been a few really wonderful thoughts that have been also put into our chat. I was reading them as you were also sharing your views. And a lot of people have agreed with your views. Some have also, there are a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. One question was related to the parental consent. It says sometimes senior students open up to a school counselor, but don't want their parents to know. What to do in such a case, as parental consent is necessary for counseling? So this is a very good question, actually. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So, the way I look at it is, and absolutely, parental consent is a must where there's a minor in concern.
Yeah.
But if the parent themselves, we don't have child security services over here. If a parent is a direct threat to a child, then how do we safeguard the child, right? How does a teacher safeguard the child? And I think in some places where we realize that the child is at direct risk from a primary caregiver, I think that we can give it to the child to open up. If it means taking a month of counseling, taking 2 months of counseling, because a lot of times what will happen is that when a child comes with a presenting issue, they will be shunned and they will be said, no, we are sure this is not happening in your house. But little do we know, maybe after 7 p.m., things go really topsy-turvy in their households. So really listening to the child, really watching their ways. Is their homework getting done? Are they performing in class? Is everything okay with them? Again, is everything unspoken, in that unspoken silence, is everything okay with that child? And then slowly bring in the primary caregivers. I think that much can be taken out in the school. And I do realize that there's so much time that is required on the educators and the counselors' hands, but tackling these things with sensitivity is also very important.
Yeah. And one last question that we'll just take on before we end. So someone asked, kindly elaborate the essentials of a mentally healthy school culture for teachers as well.
Absolutely. I cannot, stress more upon the fact that having the trainer be trained is very important. So if you have an emotional wellness program, the teachers and the staff members have the equal opportunity to utilize it. Be able to take mindful sessions, be able to take therapeutic sessions where, if your cup is full, you can access mental health care campaigns. You can talk about your stuff. You can equip yourself with tools. So really knowing what is causing disparity, what is causing unease, and really addressing it and talking it out, because you will not be able to be a good person holding environment if you have stuff going on inside. So if your needs are addressed, if your self-empathy is addressed, if your own self-awareness is addressed, you will be able to provide and equip the students also. So it is very important to be emotionally self-regulated for the staff members. And And, with that, we can keep going and going on. But to know when your cup is full, really to know when you cannot go on and when to say no is so, so important. So important.
Absolutely. I think that was a very good question. And I think it, like I said, I think holistically, we kind of touched upon not only schools, students, but parents and teachers. So thank you for everybody who had been sharing wonderful comments, wonderful views, and their questions as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And most importantly, thank you so much, Rabia, for sharing, you're always, I think, they're insightful thoughts and musings, and one really learns so much from you. So thank you so much for giving us this time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Really was.
All right. So this does bring us to an end for today's World Mental Health Day event. Thank you for everybody who's joined us, who's been there throughout the day, to all our speakers from the first two segments, and to Rabia, you as well. I think what we can take away from this entire day today is that the day hasn't come to an end, but what we can take from today and carry it forward for all the days that follow. And make sure that we play, even if it's a small part, but honestly, no part is small, but playing your part in reducing gaps, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you are a mental health professional, or even just a family member noticing someone's going through something. I think we can all play a part in reducing that gap and increasing more and more access and dialogue towards mental health and normalizing it. So thank you so much, everybody. On this note, we will be saying goodbye. And and there are definitely more things to follow. Bayview High School will continue to have certain future collaborations. We're really excited to bring them forward to you. Not going to be sharing too much right now, but just really some exciting stuff coming your way. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.